Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to another Wolfram language design review. I am told this is the 800th episode of this series. Wow.
Good.
Okay. Yeehaw. And actually we have three live streams coming up today. First, we are talking about Tabular, then we'll be talking about calculus and algebra, and then we'll be talking about biomolecules. Okay, but here we're talking about Tabular. So
Yes. So we have this section on types that we started on Thursday. So
we're not calling this join across as being called column combine, right? Or column wise combine, right?
yes. So that was the
Yes.
discussion of modifying join across,
Yeah, okay.
which is
So
separate
this is all
discussion.
done. Yeah, column wise combine. Yeah. Oh,
Fundamentally, yes. We
Yeah.
want to revisit tabular cleaning with Julio and data connection, of course. That will continue in hopefully soon.
okay.
So
Yep.
today, the new section today is at the end. It sets operations, something that Carlo and Leonid can describe in more detail. And perhaps you wanted to continue discussing types, which we started on the last meeting.
Right. So is this a cleaner list than we had before? Or is this the same as the list we had before?
It's the same, but I think it's complete. It's completed, right, Rob?
Yeah, I mean, there's only a couple of questions in there, like should we call the list thing list vector because that's more like the compiler.
Well, is it a list or?
Well, it represents a list, so each element is a list.
Okay, I understand.
That's what it
I
represents.
mean, this is all pretty low level stuff. What is a list tuple?
That's something that comes from the compiler. That allows different types. So it's a list, but it has different types across the elements of the list.
Right, so it's like homogeneous versus inhomogeneous list.
Well, Christopher, what would you call these things? I mean, this is low level compiler land, this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, almost all of these, I mean, right, all the ones that have compiler equivalents, with maybe one exception I see, have the same name as in the compiler,
Yeah.
and the other ones have seemingly kind of reasonable names. The only one that's a little different is in the compiler, there's list tuple and list vector, but here there's list tuple and just list.
Let's call it list vector. If it's called list vector in the compiler, let's call it list vector here.
Like I'm happy to change it to list vector.
Okay.
And binary versus byte array?
Well, what is it in the compiler?
It's byte array in the compiler.
Then let's change it.
Let's change it. Okay, fine.
Let's just have it agree with the compiler.
I'm confused. Isn't binary just true false? No, that's Boolean.
No, that's Boolean.
Okay. So
It's just wrong.
Is
just wrong.
list of
Yeah.
list Boolean the same as binary, or can it be converted easily?
No.
See,
No.
byte array is a much clearer name.
Yeah, byte. Yeah, I could see. Yeah, byte array is obviously better.
The confusion that's being generated right now is why we should change this.
Yeah, exactly. So I will change it soon.
Sorry,
Okay.
sorry, I was muted. So so when it says fixed width, it means fixed width in bytes. It's not a bit vector. It's a byte vector that we're talking about here.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Actually, what about?
Go ahead.
Well, just a quick question. So for something like that, I assume can all of these be ragged, or some of them like every row has to have the same length?
The list vector and the binary or the byte array can be ragged. Yes. And
Okay.
so the one with the length qualifier says that it can't be ragged. They have to be consistent lengths.
I see. Yeah.
We can survive without the length one. It's sort of a memory optimization, but again,
Wait a minute. These are the types for elements in a column, or these are the types for a whole column?
They're types for elements in a column.
Okay.
Wait, what's the difference?
Well, because we're not taking the whole vector of stuff in the column. This is just the individual.
Oh, yeah, right. It's a vector of this. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. So that's the example I gave below. The compiler type would actually be type specifier of tabular column integer 8.
Right.
Wait, why is it in quotes? those things aren't in quotes, right, in the compiler.
Which things?
Integer. When you
No, those
type
are in
write a
quotes in the
type.
Yeah,
compiler.
those are always in quotes in the compiler. Yeah.
Oh, okay, fine.
Yeah, and sparse array and numeric array are in quotes too.
Yeah.
Even though they're heads.
Okay.
Otherwise.
Nominal scale and ordinal scale, are those the right names? That seems
I would
completely
argue
wrong
no.
to me. What's that?
I just said I would argue no.
I think it should
Yeah.
be enum, basically, because that's what they are.
No, but
No.
there shouldn't be scales. I mean, I think, it's in some, from certain perspective, calling them scales is correct, but I don't think in a type system that doesn't seem right at all.
So what
No.
are they? Are they enums or are they not enums?
Well, they're,
I
if you think of like super old programming languages, yeah, they would be enums.
Well, that's like the same super
but
old
enums
programming
have-
languages that have integer 32.
But the enums, I feel like, are also a little bit different. Like enums, like for example, people generally assume that enums, that there's an integer representation that you can access or something like that, which you can't necessarily
which
do.
is not true of modern C++, but that is true of C, and also
Okay.
older versions of C++. Or did they call it? Maybe they called it something else. Right. C++ definitely has an enum type, which is not castable to an integer, and maybe it was enum something. Maybe they invented a new name for that.
But
If
also
John were
enum is
here,
also
he would know the
esoteric.
answer. What's that?
Yeah, I mean, enum is just a very
Yeah.
esoteric, weird. Like,
Okay,
it was
fine.
never
What
clear
should
to
we
me why
call
they
this?
called it that.
I mean, a common name for enum is record. I don't know that still conveys the right.
Oh,
No.
no, that does more. Record
I
types
think-
do
I mean,
different
what
stuff.
I would
but
prefer is
also they are really different. The two, one shouldn't conflate the two. Because
You
there's
mean
like,
nominal and ordinal?
yeah.
I mean, we could have a blah and ordered blah.
Yes,
which,
that's what I'm thinking, but what's
Yeah.
blah?
yes.
Maybe just
in the-
categorical.
Enumeration.
right.
In the-
I like
in
the
the
name
interpreter type
categorical.
system- What?
I like the name
Categorical
categorical.
is an adjective.
Yeah,
What about
I mean-
enumeration?
Say it again.
Enumeration.
Steven, in the
And
interpreter-
here's another name for you guys, which you reject, but in R they're called factor.
What?
Yeah.
Because no,
No,
wait.
I know this is
Well, I
instrumental.
want to understand why they. use
Yeah,
that name.
I know. I was totally baffled. Okay, so here's a reason. If you build a linear regression model and you're going to use a categorical variable,
Oh,
each value is basically going to be a new
Yes,
numerical
okay.
variable.
Factor. Yes.
So that's a factor.
Brilliant. Okay.
Okay,
Let's just remove that. Okay. Carlo is suggesting choices, which I don't think is the worst thing in the world.
I don't love it, but it's what we use for the interpreter type system.
It's a discrete set of choices. I mean, it
Yeah.
goes along with random choice. What is used in the categorical data, right? Is categorical distribution and so on, right?
Given that we have not used
The
collection
problem when we
elsewhere,
build-
we could go with collection in order
but
to.
it's not a
we want to use
collection.
it. What's
But
that?
it's not a, if it's a collection, you expect that like it's going to contain multiple elements. But no, it's just one
Exactly.
thing.
Oh, I see.
But it does contain it
No,
contains
it doesn't. It doesn't. Each
Well,
individual thing.
the
Instance, yeah.
categories themselves are unique, but the whole vector itself may contain multiple instances.
Well, but wait, you mean like if I have something that's of type collection, I expect it's going to be like a set or something
Mhm.
like
Yes.
that. But here
Yeah.
it's just like a
Yeah.
value.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
is
not
it
saying
a
I like
categorical
collection.
element?
That's not horrible. I think that's the least bad one we've come up with thus far. What about, I know, this may be even way worse, but selection? Right?
I don't
You're
like it. That has so many other cursors and all
No,
kinds
no,
of
no.
things like that.
Yeah.
What is the point of the element part? Aren't these all elements?
And so the reason you want to invent this name now is for the compiler, or that it fits better with the compiler, or
No, just that it's a name that is absolutely incomprehensible. Every time I see this in this list, it is incomprehensible.
Yep.
That's
Okay.
why I want to invent a new name.
Okay.
A nominal scale is something to do with graphics or whatever else, or, you know, or it's not storage, you know.
Also, I think half people don't know what ordinal means.
Well, if you're in statistics, you do, but
Well,
Yes.
Okay,
right.
all right, okay.
But-
Let's come back to this, please.
Yeah.
Can I put my vote against using element in there? Because then people might think that it's the same as repeating element and compound element.
Well, yes, I don't think element is great.
Although it
Okay.
won't be a symbol, it'll just be a string, so it's slightly less. But I also agree the element does just add nothing. They're all
Yeah.
elements.
Yeah.
Integer element.
By the way, in the boxes of categorical distribution, they're called categories.
Right. So yeah, I was just gonna say, maybe we should call it category.
Oh gosh. No, because we've got all kinds of category theory stuff coming along.
I see. I was not aware of that.
well, I like categorical and ordered categorical. I think that's not bad. Maybe.
Yeah.
The problem with categorical is it's an adjective.
As in, I know the battles in the order categorical.
What?
It's the Major General song.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow. That's that older word.
Categorical imperative. That's an adjective.
Well, but that's not, I don't think that having an adjective is that terrible, because remember the underlying data and the normal stays the same. You're just changing the representation to be categorical.
That is a recovery argument if ever I heard one.
Okay, sorry, Stephen.
Okay. Well, I mean, certainly if one saw this, one would understand what it was, I think. By the way, even the description.
You
here,
know
stored
what
as
we could probably do, Rob, you tell me, let's say that we had categorical and ordered or not ordered is basically like a Boolean in there, kind of like
Yep,
Langford.
that's exactly how arrow represents it, and essentially that's how I represent it in our reference thing. So
I mean,
yes.
in principle, Boolean is categorical too, but it's,
Yeah. I like categorical, and I don't see why we shouldn't have ordered categorical as well. I think putting it in as a, because in these other cases.
Well, the only thing about ordered categorical is that it kind of sounded like, at least last time, like Roger, you were talking about grand plans for having ordered categorical things elsewhere. And so if we had something called ordered categorical here that doesn't do all that stuff, then it might be hard to add it later.
well, I don't know about the names I mean, these are just strings. It doesn't matter that much.
Well, yes, it does, because we don't want a symbol that's somehow. What is the thing you're imagining is the later version of this?
So I imagine doing, and I've done it just rough, to have them live on as a type of compound symbols on their own, instead of just in a column or in just as a visualization function, because then you can have lists of them and they know enough about themselves and how they order and so on. They can display nice, and it would just fit the language better in terms of how we.
So explain that again. What you have in mind? I didn't understand that.
Okay, so normally I think of date as a date vector, but we have these isolated dates in the system, and they are an actual object, and they have all this extra crud around them to deal with all that. But really, it's just like, if you get Unix time, that's all that's needed, right? But that's
all that's needed for humans. That's all that's needed for. Okay, but in any case, so I mean, your point is that
so right now, if you have just a string in the system, it's a little bit like Unix time. I don't know.
Yeah, I understand. I understand what you're saying. You're saying that you want something where it is. I have an A. It is in the collection of a set of things A, B, C, etc.,
Right.
etc., etc. It's a kind of like,
And what we can do then is also curate and almost build a repository, if we like, of these categorical scales, particularly the ordered scales is of interest.
We talked about this years ago, right?
Yeah, and so there's a ton of them, that's used in psychology, and there are these hardness scales, for instance, like the borderlines of physics. But in particular in medical and
some of them are discrete. The hardness scale is not discrete.
Right.
Right, but the question is, so if we introduce this, then, for example, would indexing into an ordered categorical column, would that return something with a different head from what we have to do right now?
Yes.
Right. So that, I would argue, is an argument for not exposing this immediately.
Yeah, I agree with Christopher.
Which, the ordered categorical thing?
Yeah, just that ordered right. Unordered categorical is just pure optimization, and so it should just, why not? But that ordered categorical sounds like it's going to mean something semantically different from anything we can implement right now.
Right.
But it is actually kind of important in data science too. Like we often.
I understand, but do we need it right now?
Well, it sounds like the only effect it would have right now is stuff like if you sort on an ordered categorical column, then it can do something slightly nicer.
Yeah.
But frankly, I think it's like kind of marginal if it means that we're going to have to do some big breaking change later.
No, but also like in this, you kind of want them in the right order.
Look, guys,
awkward.
I think it is sufficiently defensive if we call it categorical and categorical ordered, which is okay, given that we have real 32 and all those kinds of things. And, when we have a better design, the things which are the symbolic, like a symbolic date, for example, whatever that name is, we can use that as another type in this collection. Does that seem reasonable? I mean, whatever this is, the categorical ordered thing will be some internal type that will have to be converted later.
Yeah.
There's one thing I was wondering with respect to this. I mean, if I'm asking whether an ordered categorical is a type of categorical, does that return true? Like, does one contain the other?
I don't know. I mean, does real 32 contain, does real 64 contain real 32? No, I don't think so. They're just disjoint types.
Well, it depends on what you mean by contain, right? I mean, first of all, I'm not sure the tabular.
Right, you can losslessly cast a real 32 to real 64, but not conversely.
Right, but first of all, does the tabular system ever care about a concept of what types can represent what other types?
Well, I think, in general, and here I'm trying to introduce a new discussion item, which is
we need to move on though. So
that's my tentative moving on here. Like, I think that there are a number of cases where we don't want users to have to specify whether it's an integer 64 or 32, but they probably will just want to say integer, and we do the right thing. So, I think this is not just for Tabular. Maybe it's also in general for the compiler, that to have the idea of this kind of super types that, if they have to, if you have to do type matching, they match all of the subtypes. But if you have to do something like casting, it will choose something reasonable based, say, on the fact that your computer is 64 bits.
Right. So the closest analog in the compiler, which is not really what you're talking about though, Carlo, is there's abstract types. So there's an abstract type called integers. And, all of the integer 32, integer 8, et cetera, are all members of that abstract, or all instances of that abstract type. But there's none of that. Right now, there isn't any of this sort of automatic, like you just say integer, and it figures out which type you want.
But the way I see it is not abstract types. I see it as in terms of inheritance, really. Well, yes.
Well, abstract types are
integer is an abstract type, but it doesn't have to be the case that, in inheritance, you can inherit also from a concrete type, not just from an abstract type. Like that's what I meant with, this categorical. Like, one could be a subtype of the other.
Right. I think, well, Yeah, I know Tom, I think, has some opinions about inheriting from concrete types and stuff. I honestly don't know. But right. But I'm not sure that we necessarily even need to have a whole theory of that, to have something like just integer work and tabular.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, really the motivation behind this is that if the level at which we document is integer 64, then I at some point have to go and find out if what Postgres means by bigint and and what it means by date and what the
Sure.
granularity is
That's
exactly.
what's going to have to happen. Yes, that's the work we have to do.
Well, no,
I
you
don't-
mean as in when you import, if you want to import from a SQL database and you at some point maybe need to tell it the type of the column, you need to look up, what's the mapping between SQL's types and R types.
Yeah, but
what
like
you mean there?
I don't think like there's a zoo of stuff out there and like different versions of Postgres do different things. I don't think we should be in the business of redocumenting what they did. We should just return the right thing. But I don't think that when you query the schema of an external database, we should give you like an explanation of whatever they had. Remember, we had this discussion about relational database back in a few years ago. Like, do we want to explain?
Yeah, we return the
wacky stuff they
genericized
did?
version of their type. That's what we return, right? Correct?
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah, right now we do that.
Yeah, okay, so fine.
it's-
So the same
It's
thing
worked
here.
fine.
Okay, so
Right.
then we just need in this list a genericized version, integer, unsigned integer, presumably real. What the heck
Right.
is complex real?
I wondered about that.
What the heck is that?
Why do we
It's
do-
it's specifying the size. That's what the compiler does. Instead of complex 64 and complex 128, which were potentially ambiguous, it's saying it's a complex based on Real 32 and a
Oh,
complex
that's what
based
they mean. Oh.
and
Yeah.
Real 64.
Okay,
A
but
little
the other things here
esoteric.
are
So
generic.
we
So-
have something called machine integer and machine real and machine complex, for example. And that's so when you get an integer in Mathematica as a machine integer, it's that's what
Okay.
it is.
What do we need to figure out here? Because we've got a lot to cover today. What do we need to figure out here? Do we need these genericized types? Maybe we need the machine integer type, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what else do we have to cover here? Nothing? Okay, let's move on.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got
Is-
categorical and categorical order to what we're calling
Is
these.
date in there and time
Date is here.
and time?
That's not included. That should be included in that list, but it's not.
And
Okay,
do we
so
have
that's a
date
bug,
time?
so fix it. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
in the interpreter type system, date means up to date. It doesn't have the hour, minutes, and seconds.
Yeah, our date is what's often called date time in our
Yeah,
system.
so maybe we should call it date time, not date. Because
It's
we already
supported.
have a precedent for that in the language.
Fine.
Interpreter.
Yeah, we support that name too as an alias to general date.
Yeah, but date doesn't have the time.
Yeah.
Well,
But we have date object, which is
you
date
can have dates with
Yeah.
granularity of date. You put the granularity you want, and that's it.
Okay, so what are we doing here? Is this called date or date time?
I think it should be called date in general. Date time is a form of date which admits both date
Okay.
and which has both date and time, and then we have time.
I don't know, but I think
Okay,
here
we got to move on.
Yeah, but guys, there is a problem here. Date time is a timestamp. It's something that always has all the granularity. It's not a calendar date. It doesn't mean
Yeah,
it.
then what we've got here with
instant.
date is a thing that maps our date object, and that's what we want.
Yeah, and I think
So
that's
anything
fine.
else
But what
we
I'm
need
saying,
to do separately.
what I'm saying is that date time should always be instant.
Okay, well, that's
It is,
irrelevant
it
to
is.
this.
It is. That's how date time is defined, Carlo.
Okay.
Okay, great.
All right, okay. So I think we went over all of this stuff, did we not? This is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are we in fact having cost as a top level thing or not?
I think it should be there, given that the command exists and it feels natural in transform columns.
It's a little odd because right now that only, I guess why not? But it seems like
does
it would be
cost
good.
Evaluate or not?
It does not. It gives an error that says it only works in the compiler.
Well, obviously that's got to be removed, right?
Well, at least changed.
Right. Right. It's inside of function, which is all complete, right? So don't need to worry about it evaluating.
Well, that raises the question of should cast just evaluate? I remember we talked about this when we were discussing it with the compiler.
Right. And I think we decided no, because there's some situations where cast is doing like non-trivial things. Like, oh, I'm casting from a dynamic array to a list vector. Those have different expression representations. So it's not a no-op in the evaluator.
Well, it doesn't. I'm not expecting it to be a no-op. And if you cast from a real to an integer, you're going to get some kind of weird bit pattern garbage. I assume.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's just that. Right. I mean, I guess we could, basically the point is that there's a complicated cast primarily as it exists in the compiler is for converting between compiler types. Compiler types have an imperfect matching to interpreter types. There are lots of things that have different representations in the compiler and are the same in the interpreter and vice versa. And so then we could make a whole nother version of cast in the interpreter that would map between interpreter objects. But that's like, it would be many levels removed from what's going on in the compiler. And frankly, I think it's much better just to have functions, convert from X to Y.
So listen, the issue that I have is if I'm trying to debug something and cast only evaluates in some weird situation inside, transform columns, I'm going to be very confused.
And also, I think that example you have on the screen is kind of wrong. Because it shouldn't, you can't cast a year. You should be casting the Unix time to date.
If the year is I mean, I think that's a different issue, right? I mean, year is the name of the column here, right? And we have an interpretation of such things, right? If we only have the year, that means midnight on January 1st.
No. But what I'm saying,
is the year a timestamp? Is the year going to say 1996 and cast of date returns? It's not going to interpret 1996 as a Unix timestamp or something, or an absolute time.
I think that if internally dates are represented using as Unix times, casting from number to date.
But that's not a number string.
Okay, guys, I think this casting thing is dangerous. And do we really need it? Other than as an internal
thing. we can do the tabular column I show above, but we need the way to insert tabular columns into tabular.
No, but wait, why do you need the tabular column? That would be, if you want to do that cast year, that is basically just date object.
Okay, let's see what we can do without having the explicit cast in here, because I don't understand. In this case here, we want to say this is a tabular column that we are declaring to be of type date. Correct?
Yep.
Okay, that seems fine, but we don't need this cast operation, which who knows what that's going to do. I think you can normal the tabular column and then run tabular column again with a second argument, which is the specification.
Well, I mean, you don't even need I mean, if we're going to do nested tabular column, we don't need the normal, right?
We don't need the
column of tabular column.
But what we do need,
I think Rob's. Go ahead, Rob.
What we do need is a way to put tabular column into a tabular, whether that's to tabular or something else. We were discussing that like 2 meetings ago.
So, but so your cast is still a way to change the type,
convert the representation in place.
That we would like to have, wouldn't
we? Okay, fine. You know what? We are running out of time to do complicated designs. I don't think this design is clean enough. I think we should leave it out for now. And let's not worry about in-place type conversion. We worry about type conversion on the way in, and so on. Now, the question that you're raising is, if I want to insert a tabular column into a tabular, how do I do it?
Right.
Let's remind ourselves about these things here. How do I insert a column wholesale?
Can we not do it as an L value? Right. Well, actually, I don't remember where we ended
An
up.
L value is
have-
very risky if we have rows as the first thing. 'Cause
Right.
we don't want people to try and change rows. That's expensive. So
I'm not keen on the L value stuff. I mean, the
Yeah.
one way to do it, presumably, is with column-wise. How would we do that?
Right, but you will need to join on row IDs for that.
I think if you look
So
at
how
the
do you
core
not join on row
transformation
IDs? What does it
functions,
mean if you're not joining on row IDs? I don't understand. If you've got a
Could-
tabular column that is coming in from the wild, and its row IDs don't agree with the row IDs of things that are already there, it's kind of a toasted column.
Sure.
Does the tabular column know its name? I thought it was just like, here, I'm a column of
No, I
information.
don't think it knows its name. It doesn't know
Right.
its name, but
No.
it does know its row ID. It does know its row information.
Right.
I don't
Well, I mean, it
think
just has
so. I don't-
ordering, you know.
Can maybe we discussed this and rejected this, but can we not do something like, transform column and just say, in the special case, foo goes to tabular column rather than using that as a function that tries to replace the column with
I
that?
don't think that's unreasonable.
that's what works now, but
One reason-
I don't like it.
Yeah, one reason we were against this was that transform columns in all other circumstances work on element like on row-wise basis, and adding another special case where it works on column-wise basis to us is not.
Well, okay,
the
so I don't
cleanest
understand. Why
design.
isn't column-wise combined the right thing?
It is, but
Well-
when we were discussing joining on row IDs, I think that part was a little bit left out because we didn't yet decide how to introduce row IDs in a consistent manner.
No, I don't understand.
So why
Here's
couldn't
what I'm
maybe you could just
suggesting.
write, column-wise combine of tab, comma, call or something.
Exactly. Right. Where that's a tabular column instead of a full tabular there.
Oh, you mean that it's gonna be implied that in that case it's gonna join on row IDs without any specific specific.
Yes. The only
spec.
question is, what's the name of the added column?
If you use a rule
Yeah.
tab,
Can we use a rule, or did we already use up rules for millions of other things in column-wise combine?
I think we did use
Well,
rules. I
I
guess.
Rules are
suppose in
used
the
for prefixing.
association, if we had just a bare column and use that in the association
Wait.
syntax, that could be the name.
What about having to wrap the column in a tabular to use column-wise combine? I
Well,
don't
then
know
you
how
need to
common-
join it with some, like you need some. Right now, I think you have to when you just give it two things, it tries to find common columns that it can do
Right. Right.
a join over, and there's no common column.
I see.
But honestly, I don't see a problem. Maybe I'm missing something to use the column instead of a tabular in column-wise combine and use a rule, because the only way we use rules are typically for prefixing. And since you can parse columns separately, you can distinguish them from tabulars. So I don't see any clash here.
What does
Right.
this mean here?
Those are the columns to join on.
I see. So which way round would you put it? Would you put it?
Well,
Uh,
look down at the association syntax, which comes a little bit below association.
But again, with the association, then you have to name your tabular too.
Right, but see this. So if tab 2 were a bare column, think of if you're prefixing nothing, then that's just the prefix itself. So that would be the column name, would just be beta.
But now you have to prefix alpha. I mean, frankly, I don't.
That's
I
the
think we might
problem
have
with
talked about this before,
association.
but
Yeah.
right. But I forget if we talked about this before. But is there a reason why we don't just have a different function for this? That's like some sort of column append or something.
I
Yeah.
think that would be much more intuitive for people
I did
to
too.
have a different column insert or a column append or
Okay, so
something like
let's
that.
just
Yeah.
okay.
And I
hold on.
think we had a discussion in that core transformations functions. I think we had some things on that, if I remember correctly.
Now, are we
not
talking
there.
about just now? right now, are we talking about the problem of just adding a tabular column in general, or the specific problem of doing a cast? Because
No, we're not talking about costs. We're talking about we're just talking about add columns.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like if
And
I
maybe we
take a
should
column out by indexing, how would I put it back in? Would be one version.
We listed the function in the cleaning section. If you open the cleaning section below,
Oh, that's where it is.
I think
and
Well,
tabular cleaning.
I think one reason why we didn't consider column append as a separate function at the end.
So is this not insert columns?
Yeah, I think it is insert column.
Oh, it is?
But there's also an append columns
or append
section.
columns. And I think these functions could be great for matrices too, because this operation appears sometimes.
I agree.
Now, is the name there? If it's an so for insert columns, if new is an existing name, does that replace that column then, or what happens?
I'd imagine yes. Like imagine if you want to do this casting thing, then you'd want to replace.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so then replace columns and insert columns are the same if the
there's also a replace columns. Okay.
There is one question I wanted to ask here, and this is something we discussed before. Should we then, if we introduce these functions, should we constrain the length to always be the same as the length of other columns? Because if it's not the same, then it's kind of a realm of column-wise combine more than
right. Of course, they have to be the same. Yeah.
Okay. So it's an error if they're not.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Now the insert column, there's no way I see, at least in what's there to control where we're inserting it.
I was thinking about that.
Yeah. So we talked about having anchor columns and transform column, I think it was, maybe. Or this could be an append columns and they just always go at the end. Oh, we have an append columns. So so how do
okay, what was our mechanism for anchor columns? How do we set that up? That's in transform columns, right?
I believe so. And we just had the column name not as a rule. Right, so we had a list. Or maybe this was in column construct columns, whatever the other one is. No, because that starts from scratch. Yeah, but I'm sure we had this. Yeah,
I'm sure we had it too. Because we were talking about anchor columns, and we're talking about putting it in a list. Yes, you're right. Putting it in a naked list where it just says to give the ordering, basically, you're putting
right.
in...
I think it was a nested list, and you put the anchor before, after, right?
No, what you do is this. What you do is the following thing. As you're reading through, okay, so this is in the subject of anchors. Okay.
Oh, right. It's left to right. Now I remember. Yes.
Right. So I mean, in other words, this is a thing one is something that's actually in there, but you're not commenting on it, and you're saying new one goes to blah blah blah. Thing two is the anchor, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Right, and then you could have new two and new three, and they would both come after thing two.
Exactly. Yes.
Isn't this the syntax for tabular construct? No, column construct.
No, because column construct you
construct columns
or construct.
Yeah.
It could be for either, really.
Right. I mean,
it's just transform columns is identical to construct columns, except it just makes sure to always include the original columns.
Right.
And modified.
Right. Basically in construct columns, this would just be a shorthand for thing one goes to, thing one ampersand, or what pound thing one ampersand, or whatever is.
You could do that. Yes, you could do that. Although its construct columns will then have no other columns in it. Whereas
exactly,
this is more what we want with insert columns. right? This would be something for transform takes existing columns.
Steven, can I ask something? Like, we never really had the need to do this with associations. Like, there's a number of functions for inserting things in the middle. Like, you can insert them at the end and then shuffle them around, but usually you don't really care much about the ordering.
I think people are going to care more.
Yeah, I
but if
think.
you want- if you
I mean,
care about that-
right. I mean, people certainly care about the orders of things in their spreadsheets, and
Yeah.
No, they do, but what I'm saying,
Yeah, okay.
what I'm
So
saying
they're
is
going to
that-
need to care about the order. So let's just move on.
Yeah, but what I'm
Okay.
saying is that these are conceptually two operations. One is inserting, and the other one is reordering.
Okay,
Look,
okay,
so
that's a separate thing, but okay, we've got another issue. We've now got three functions. Okay, we've got all these functions: replace columns, transform, construct, etc., etc., etc. They're all doing the same thing basically.
I disagree with that. I think, transform and construct are sort of in one category. Now you can make the argument that insert, replace, and append, they're sort of, all three of them are sort of mixtures of those functions in the normal Wolfram language case. And so maybe we only need one or two of them.
Okay, so wait a minute. What does replace do as compared to transform? I think they do the same thing.
I thought replace column was something that we were proposing to take tabular columns, right? You replace one tabular column with one column with a tabular
Actually,
column.
where we're not allowing transform columns to have a right-hand side, which is a tabular column.
Correct. It wants to be a function always, or one of those shorthands for a function.
Even though nothing is arguably a thing very much like, I mean, so the possibility would be transform columns could take tab and then, foo arrow tabular column. I don't really object to that. Because given that we're allowing things like nothing, I don't really see why we shouldn't allow tabular column there.
Well, I think, Stephen, that conceptually we still think of whatever we feed into these rules at the right-hand side as functions that are acting row-wise. And for nothing, it's just the shortcut for assuming that it's applied nothing to every row on that place, on that column. But if you add the tabular column, then it's
I get the idea. I get the point. I think that the nothing thing is a little bit of a squiggle.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why the tabular column isn't something. I mean, what happens if you index into a
By the
tabular
way,
column?
Steven,
Wait a second. If you index into a tabular column with its row indices, what do you get?
So do you mean single brackets or double brackets?
Single brackets. I bet you get the element, right?
No, there's no single bracket thing, but the double brackets work. So part works as you would expect it to.
Why doesn't, I mean, but if the single bracket thing worked, then this could be just thought of as a function.
No, because it's normally a function of an association, not the row ID.
Yeah. By the way, nothing is not a squiggle because nothing, open, close, whatever, is still nothing. Like if you do open list and then nothing and you pass it an empty association, closed list, then that still works.
Oh, I see that. I didn't know.
That's nice. So that's not even an abuse of notation. But tabular column kind of is.
Let's review this one more time. It seems okay. The question is, do we want a whole other thing called replace columns where the only thing that can occur on the right-hand side is a tabular column? Right? In this case, the only way this could work is, and will we allow this whole thing? Will we allow nothing in replace columns? Will we allow that?
I think it's kind of fine to allow nothing, but I wonder, this can be done with a constructor.
I'm sorry,
like,
what?
It can be done with the tabular constructor, like with the head tabular.
I mean, I think we could sort of avoid this if we just had, an append columns or insert columns. Maybe append columns is better. Right, and if it's an existing name, it replaces it. And, we could add.
What does it do in an association? Append an association or replace, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
It'll stick it at the end if it's new, and if it will replace in place if it's an existing. Oh, it did it at the end. Okay.
Well, that's what you would expect append to do.
But
right.
now the thing is, maybe probably the L value thing is what you're saying, Itai.
Could be.
Or probably it's the association comprehension that does that.
Well, what if you put join instead of? Yeah, I didn't expect that.
I doubt join will work without. No, it says
No,
it needs
but
to
if
be.
you make that an association, then okay.
I think it'll do
Well,
the Oh.
Right.
That seems weird.
Yeah, I didn't expect that either for join.
Okay, let's ask this question. Okay, two questions. We've got a tabular. I've got a new ordering of columns.
I think I
How
can
do I
explain join.
inject the new ordering of columns into a tabular?
Just ordering?
Yes.
With construct columns, which is also why the name construct columns always confused me. Like with construct columns, you can just reorder them.
Right.
So
you
in other words, to
span.
reorder, I would say construct columns.
Yeah, and the second argument is tab, and then random sample of of your
because the right hand side by default is hash the first thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, remember when we started to work on this, we also talked about having spans and all in there. So
we're not going to do that.
No.
Why not?
We're not going to do it. It's complicated enough as it is. You can construct that list. By the time you've got a 3,000 column tabular, you're going to be doing things programmatically. How do you extract a list of the names of the columns from a tabular?
Column keys?
Column piece, yep.
Okay. All right. So basically, if I want to do this, I say column keys, and then whatever spannery I might do is, if I say this, if I say, 5 to 9. Now, how do I do this? Basically, what I want is 5 to 9, comma. Can I do this? How do I do this? If I want to reorder these 1 to 4, is that going to work? Well, there's some way to do this.
No, that's
not going to work because it's going to be 2 levels.
Right, that's 2 levels. There's no simple way to do that.
Oh, but arguably with the fact that associations are kind of
got to move on,
auto-flattening.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it should work there, but I still think it could work in construct columns.
Okay, all right, fine. That's a future enhancement. Okay, let's just agree what we're doing with this. Okay, do we want... I don't think we need all of replace, insert, and append.
I think just append would be sufficient.
No, but why not insert so that you can use the anchoring mechanism, which I think is nice. I think people are going to want that.
Well, I mean, arguably append could also take the anchoring mechanism.
I know, but I think it's going to be obscure.
That's obscure. In insert, it's less obscure.
Yes. I mean, my one argument again to prefer append over insert is that, right, in insert, you normally need to give a position. And
yes, I agree.
Here, there's a default at the end, which is what makes it feel more like an append than an insert.
But you could also replace a column.
That's true.
Insert could have a default
that goes at the end.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think insert is less confusing because Well, the issue is, do we need to replace columns separately? I argue no.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if we make clear how this anchoring mechanism works, I think insert is fine.
All right.
One other question, which I think Itai mentioned earlier, is what about L values?
I hate L values.
I mean, we have really nice L value stuff with associations.
Yeah,
and we also have L value stuff for like matrices.
Yeah, the problem, Christopher, is that the part syntax for tabular has rows, comma, columns.
Right.
And
so someone specifies
we don't want to make
not
L value
all,
for rows,
yeah.
so we'd have to have the single bracket syntax refer to columns, which is kind of a big change. It's a deviation.
Well, no, right. I mean, it couldn't be. So is the point that you can make tab part all comma foo equals something rather, that can work, but tab of 12 equals something rather can't work.
I think if we make that syntax easy, it's a disaster because it's very expensive to replace a single row. It's cheap to replace a column. It's expensive to replace a row. And
I don't think we need L values. Look, I think L values are going to have a bug trail, and I don't think we need L values in the first instance.
Well, just let me mention that in the future we might want to have them because
yes,
they can
I
also...
understand, but we're not going to have them at first, so we don't have to solve this.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we're agreeing on insert columns, transform columns, construct columns, and insert columns. Right.
Okay. Yep.
Now, what is all this stuff? We've got delete columns, which I think is a useful thing to have. Which of these are we having? Can we please be clear on this?
So I think there is a sentence explaining that some of them are actually subsumed.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, now that we've had this discussion, I think we could make a much better summary, Stephen.
Okay. Well, please do. Please do.
Okay.
Did we have, are we going to have this separate columns or not? Or was that subsumed?
We decided that was going to be subsumed because we're going to allow the left-hand side of a rule to be a list of a set of columns.
Okay. All right. Fine. Okay. Can we please get a clean list and a clean guide page of all the functions that we're trying to have? Okay. We got to move on here. Okay. So we talked about element types. What was the big thing that we ran into last time that we were really stuck on?
It was the date parameterization.
Where? For what? Where is that now?
So look at the date types. See, when we do a date, we have parameterization of how we're representing the Unix time, and then what the granularity is, and so on and so forth. Which we need that information somehow to say how to convert back to a date object or a time object for the time case. And I think this is a nice way to do it.
But it is not in this section. Where was it? There was this 5 argument type or something.
Well, there is an example there in the tabular column that's shown, right? So the idea is that the date type has the same freedoms of the date object. So it's a way of allowing users to specify the type. What are the freedoms? Okay. The parameters of the date object that will be extracted.
This is a type. It needs type syntax, which means it can't say date open bracket. It needs to say.
No, I know it needs to be type specifier, Stephen. That's that will be done.
Okay. So what's the question here? So then, if date is a rather messy, low-level type that looks like this, I guess we can have that.
Yeah. you know, it's a little bit different than what's been done in the compiler, but I think we can make it work in the compiler as well with some effort.
Right. Okay, sorry. Okay, okay. All right, should we move on here?
Okay.
Okay. Really, we need to see clean guide pages and things of all this stuff.
Yep.
All right. What is this now? Last time we left over a bunch of stuff that wasn't completely finished, but I guess we now covered that, been talking about the types and talking about these other operations. Is that true?
So in the previous meeting, we were also discussing data connections, but I think that discussion will continue in another meeting.
Okay, so well, let's try and hit what we need to hit today. What happened to the visualization discussion? We needed that as well. What's happened to that?
I think we need a discussion that's not in an open meeting. What do you mean by visualization? Do you mean the way tables look, or do you mean plots?
No, I mean plots.
Okay, I think we need a discussion that's not in an open meeting first.
Okay. That doesn't sound good, but okay, fair enough. Then get that scheduled, please, as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So the final section is a set of functions we haven't discussed yet, which is how to do set operations. And it's something that we may not have to implement in the very first round, but it's good to look at. So the idea is to support union.
What is tabular data? What is that?
This is just a container. So we actually, if people start using random for every piece of data or programmatically generating data, then we're in deep doo-doo. So
right, this is the temporary example data for Tabular.
Yeah.
We mentioned this last time.
Yeah,
okay.
We've mentioned this several times.
Could we not call it example tabular data just so we don't have to ask it 17 more times?
Sure.
So that was an example of a case in which just doing union. Right now we have to do normal, but eventually we will not need the normal.
Is that row-wise? I'm confused by this. What is this doing?
Yes, this is taking unions and complements, etc., of rows. So, Carlo?
So wait a minute. Delete duplicates by means anytime the same species shows up on two different rows.
Squash those rows. Yeah, that's I'm using normal, so it's really just what it would do on a list of associations. It's kind of unfortunate that in delete duplicates by you can't use a string like you can in sort by, but
why can't you use a string?
I don't know. I tried it and it didn't work.
Well, okay, but maybe somebody didn't do the right thing in implementing it.
Yeah, I don't know.
What do you mean you can't use a string like you can in
use
sort by?
Species, like as bare key, basically. In sort by, you can say sort by species without hash species ampersand, just quote species.
Can you? I thought that only worked inside of data set or something like that.
Or maybe
I'm misremembering.
confused. Maybe I'm confused.
Okay.
I always thought it should work though.
How important
it definitely
is
works
this?
in data set.
Let me just be clear. In version 1 here, we've got a lot to do. Do we really need stuff like this there? This seems to me to introduce all kinds of issues.
It's not fundamental.
Well, no, it's not fundamental because you can do that with an operation. You can basically do a delete duplicates by to get the indexes of the row and then use that part. So it's roundabout, but but it can be
I'm
done.
sorry, I don't understand that. I don't understand. The whole point is, this is a way, we've been talking about a bunch of column operations.
Yeah.
Okay, now we've got row operations that are doing things. I mean, how many other what are these other things here?
They're all set operations, Steven. There's
On what?
basically 3 of
On
them.
what? On rows.
These are
correct?
list of associations in the end. So if you think of them as sets of associations, that's what you get.
Okay, but they're basically row operations. Correct? You're intersecting, you're looking at all the different rows. Am I correct or am I not?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
So let me understand this some more. So
if you open union, there's the definition of the sets. But basically, I'm taking all the Chevrolet cars, and I'm taking all the ones that have the 20 largest displacements, and then I'm doing union, intersection, complement of sets.
okay, hold on. Let's try to understand this. Okay, so there we're taking that. I don't understand what things you're going to need to do normal on and what you're not. And that may be super confusing.
Yeah, there were some things that weren't working, so I had to coerce it.
Okay, well, I don't know what's working, what's not working, what's a proposed design, what's just hackery. I don't understand.
See, the only thing that you need to care about is about the last line where you say tabular of union. I mean, that's
Okay,
not
is the
working.
normal there or not? Or is the normal
In the end, no,
there?
it's just going to be union of Chevrolet and large displacement. But for now, to show you something, I had to put tabular and normal because it's not implemented yet.
Okay, so the union is going across rows, basically. And is it sorting the rows or what's it doing?
Yeah, it's sorting the rows. By lexicographic order of association.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. So I'm trying to understand.
I mean, it's exactly the same as union of a list of associations.
Right. So if the entire row matches in both cases, then it's in there, right? Is that
Yes, and you don't need the tabular on the outside, right? That's another piece of hackery.
No.
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So this is just saying, what does union do
On two tabulars? Yes.
On two tabulars, and the answer is it should do row-wise unioning. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I agree.
Okay.
And okay, so union should do row-wise unioning. Intersection should do row-wise intersection.
Okay. I thought that would be fairly uncontroversial. Now the question is, what about same test?
Okay, but hold on. Yeah, well, let's look at same test in a minute, and then we're going to come back to the delete duplicates by.
Yeah.
I assume complement is also just the obvious thing.
Yeah.
Yes. What other set operations are there? There are some other things like symmetric difference and things like that. I mean, all the set operations should just work.
Mm-hmm.
Should they not? They should just work row-wise. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, including symmetric difference and so on. And are there any other set operations? Guys?
Do we have set difference maybe?
No.
That's
No, we have
complement.
That's complement, yeah.
We do have symmetric difference though.
Yeah. Okay, so there are operations.
I think.
I mean, I don't think subsets or tuples is going to be particularly
No.
interesting for tabular.
No. I mean, things like this, but doesn't have to be in V1. Probably do want to be to work. Intersecting Q.
By the way, of course, Also, all these could work on tabular columns.
Indeed.
Yep.
Okay. I don't know which of the, I mean, these eventually need to work, but that's a different story. Okay, same test.
I mean, I
Which
think
is a
same test
binary
should-
function in the case of union, right?
Huh? It's yeah.
Yes.
So why not support it here if we can?
No, I'm saying we should support it. But the thing is, what I wanted to draw attention on is the fact that for set operations on entity classes, we've introduced same test properties, which has a slightly nicer
We're not going to
syntax.
do that for version 1. We're not going to get it right. We're not going to do it for version 1.
There is another question here, which is if the tabular contains the key columns, should the default same test be still exact row match, or should it be key columns match?
What?
Some tabulars will have sort of key columns which determine the uniqueness.
I don't
if you
care.
remember.
I mean, who cares? Look, the same test should just do the most obvious thing in this version. We can visit this later. Right now, either implement the default same test, or if you want, implement the same test that does the obvious thing. Don't get fancy.
Yeah, I was
Fair?
asking about the default, Steven.
What does it mean for two rows to be equal? So is it
That
all
they're
elements?
same queue, that the associations associated with them are same queue.
In all cases.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
No weird thing about certain columns matter and other ones don't. Forget it. That's not what this is doing.
Okay.
Okay, let's look at delete duplicates by and delete duplicates, okay? So I don't understand. I mean, delete duplicates. I guess you can have rows that are, I mean, one argument union should work, and delete duplicates might as well work, and delete duplicate rows. Correct?
Yeah. I think
I mean,
delete
it's fine
duplicates
to do
by
that.
is
Who knows
the-
why there's a duplicate row that showed up there, but if there is a duplicate row, we might as well delete it.
Right. That's a data cleaning operation. Let's do that.
Yes. Yes. Now, delete duplicates by, I mean, we could get more sophisticated with delete duplicates when they're missings and things like that. I mean, a version of that would be nice to have is something that somehow takes rows, an operation I would like to see. It takes rows that have been added that are sort of the same row, but for missings, if you understand what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
So you think of missing as an Annie pattern, like blank.
No, I think
Yeah,
I
not
think
really.
what
I mean, I'm
Steven
just saying that you've got two things that have, A, C, and F or something are filled in, and another one where B, D, and something else are filled in. And where the C, maybe B, C, and so on are filled in, where those agree. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I was just
Yeah, I don't think Roger was disagreeing with you, right? He was just saying you're testing by, right? You're basically doing match queue where
Yes, that's right.
where missing turns into blank.
Right. So delete duplicates is uncontroversial. Delete duplicates by seems a little more controversial to me, because that's saying, I see, remove rows where, for example, they are identical by this column, for instance.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like a useful operation.
is. By the way, the
Okay.
thing you were mentioning about the missings, there is one thing that we were talking about with Rob the other day, which is kind of similar, and it's like So in SQL it's called coalesce, and it's basically select first of non-missing. So you feed it a list.
Yeah, okay, that's a lovely operation. It's not for version 1. But put it in the list for version 2, okay? All right. We've got to cauterize this design, right? We've got to finish what we can finish. Go ahead. What are we going to say?
I was just saying, I mean, I would think more interesting than delete duplicates by would be some sort of, right, harmonize these rows. I don't know what I would call it or exactly how it would work, but rather than just dropping all except the first, right? Rather than dropping all the entries that, are for Itai Segev, it would be nice if, I could reconcile the different rows.
Right. And in the end, that's going to need to be done in ways where you're normalizing names and all kinds of things like this. There's all kinds of interesting data cleaning operations to be done there. I don't think we're quite ready for it yet.
Okay.
All right. Let's review here. We're trying. We got also the data connectors, which we need to look at for a minute. But other than that, and other than visualization, if I'm understanding it, we are closing in on finishing everything that we've talked about here. Is that correct? Is there something that hasn't been addressed?
Yeah, I think that touches a little bit of everything.
Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah. So the next step,
we haven't had an in-depth in-depth conversation of typesetting either. I don't think.
No, we need to do that. Okay. So one thing that we're going to need by the next one of these meetings is a nice clean set of guide pages where we can review everything we've agreed, and where anything that is still exposed is brought up, which includes typesetting. What is the state of typesetting? Do we think we have something reasonable or not?
Yeah, I think we're converging on something reasonable. So I think that the primary thing that we've been focusing on is the sort of basics of typesetting right now. So like, how do we display numbers so you can read them reasonably? How do we display dates and times?
Yeah, okay, but obviously Dataset had already pioneered a lot of these things. So, I mean, there's also the question.
Yeah, I think we've improved on that quite a bit.
Okay, well, fine. We'll want to feed back that stuff to Dataset. Yeah. But now, just so I understand,
what we probably won't,
close columns and things like this.
Sorry, what?
We've got to be able to fold up columns. If you've got 300 columns or something, you've got to be able to fold things up. That's something we had looked at. I think Dataset has that kind of typesetting, does it not now?
What do you mean by folding?
Yeah, what do you mean by folding?
I mean that you can close. Can't you do that with the ... in Dataset? That you
mean hide?
Hide. Yes, sorry, hide. I should have said.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's doable in Dataset. It's not yet in Tabular.
And it's a double click that does the close, does the hide.
I think it's the right mouse.
Okay. If it uses its right paw, it gets to close it or to hide it. Never mind. I'm sorry.
We want to get to sort of, there's a whole new level we want to get to, but it can't make it for this version, which is to have kind of fancier tables, so that which allows one to communicate a lot of things, like highlighting a column, a row, an entry,
right?
Foreground, background, extra.
Okay, but wait a second, Roger.
Yeah.
We need to preemptively agree that the way that works in Grid, which is highly functional but not easy to use, needs to be properly dovetailed with this.
Yeah, we're looking at that. We think it's not easy to use too.
It's not easy to use. If you want examples of it, go to endless blogs I've written that have tables in them, that have highlighting and so on.
Sure.
Okay, you can see it works, but it works, and there are many issues about dividers and divider formatting and so on and so on and so on.
Yeah, I think it's sort of a little bit the same issue as viz functions versus graphics. It's a much higher level parametrization for viz functions.
I know, but there's look. I mean, again, there's a lot of examples that, and I can tell you what some of the issues are with, I mean, the fact is, there's a lot of stuff that was done positionally and so on, which probably should be done. I mean, okay, let me give you an example. In cellular automata, there is a positional way of specifying rules. There is also an association named way of specifying rules that we added. I would have expected myself to use the named ones all the time. I do not. Can I explain that? In other words, there are functions like partition, for example, where we clearly need some named settings because it's just unrememberable how the positional stuff works. But I'm not quite sure what it is. I mean, in the case of, I don't know whether the issue is kind of a GUI is needed to design, a table designer, or whether it's, and the problem with that is that a spreadsheet like GUI is not going to do us any good because we need something programmatic because table sizes change and things like this.
Yeah. We don't have a design of that to present. We have a lot of the use cases that we need to hit, and there are several ways to come up with a design for it, but it's not going to make it for now.
No, I understand. Not for this version. Okay, can we look at data connectors for a minute here? Okay, that was what we started looking at last time.
Yes.
But just a few minutes here to look at this. Okay. So give me a sense here. Wait a minute. What's this?
No.
We didn't talk about this.
This is a separate section.
Which we don't have to talk about today. And we're not going to make it for this version, right?
Pivoting, probably not.
I mean, we can.
There's no way.
Yeah.
There's no way. We don't have time. Okay. So let's take a look at these data connection things. Which one should I look at first?
I thought there was also another. Is this the right thing, Sean, or is there a better set of examples?
This doesn't look right. This doesn't look right. This better be cleaner than this. Where is the clean version?
Oh, no, those details were just if you wanted to know some information about the data set. Open that back up for a second.
I don't give a damn. I want to see the design. Where's the design?
The reference.
Well, the design is the ref page.
Okay. Thank
Data
you.
Connects.
Oh boy.
This, I don't expect this to be the long-term look of data connection, because I think we need separate pages like we have for import formats for each connection type.
No, I agree.
Okay, so the stuff that's in line in the page shouldn't be in the future.
All right. So what we had discussed last time. Where are my notes from last time? Where are the notes from last time, please? About data connection objects.
I presume in the tabular folder, Carla.
No, the notes are reported on the RP notes, but it's not like a document. If you want,
no. I was typing in things like where we discussed
it's
data
there,
connection object and so on. Where is that?
It's in Dropbox. If you look for the agenda from last meeting, those are your notes.
I'm sorry, where? In the agenda from the last meeting?
Exactly, on Dropbox.
I understand, but for the 0509 meeting, is that correct?
Exactly, yeah. That's the document you were writing on, and those are the notes you got there.
Should I be opening this in? Okay. All right.
Unfortunately, there are bugs in today's prototype, so the examples don't work. Sorry about that.
Okay. Where is what I wrote here? Data connection. Where is this? Could we please make sure that when there are things, okay, here we go. This is where we started writing this, right?
Yes.
Can we please make sure in future that when we have notes that got made here, that they somehow get carried over? And if they're really scratchy, you can put some background color behind them in the new version.
Okay.
Okay, so we don't lose them, please.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we had discussed before is that we have, just like we have database reference, as well as relational database. Relational database is the live queryable thing, am I correct? Whereas database reference is just the authenticated hook. Is that correct?
I wouldn't call it live. Database reference is the result. Sorry, the relational database is the result of an operation. If the database changes after you've evaluated, it's not going to go and call it again and say, hey, did you change? It's not live. But it has a bunch
I
of
understand that. But
Sure.
the difference is database reference is the authenticated hook to that data. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's basically a glorified URL to connect to that.
But it's not authenticated. It contains the authentication information. Right.
Okay. Is that correct? Okay, fine. But relational database, then, to get from a database reference to a relational database object requires that authentication happen, and then you have an actual handle to something you can feed SQL queries to. Is that correct?
I don't think that's the
No.
best analog for this thing here.
No. Can you
Maybe
answer
look
that
at-
question about databases? Is that how it works, or is that not how it works?
Not really, Steven. The thing that relational database does is perform an inspection. So it's going to tell you whether
Okay.
and what there
All right.
is inside the database.
You still
what
end
it
up
does.
needing to do an external evaluate to do a query.
No, you don't.
Yes, you
We've
do.
got a million functions for doing queries on
Yeah,
databases.
yeah, right. Of course, you can do the query any way you want. But what I'm saying is that, in theory, you could do a query without.
When does the
actually-
authentication happen?
It depends, because in order to perform an inspection, you have to do the authentication. But in theory, if somebody's told you that that table is present on the database, you don't need to perform the inspection to do the query. Is what I'm saying.
But then the authentication happens at the time of the first query, or what?
Yes.
Okay. But then the authentication is cached, correct?
Up to a certain point, right? I mean,
It is cached, but right now it's kind of automatic, so it's cached on a different side of things, so to speak, not in Wolfram language.
Okay.
It's always going to depend on the connection.
right, because some connections
so let's go through
are
this.
like the
Okay,
timeout, etc.
guys, what we've got here is you have a data connection reference that has certain operations that you can do, like these listed queries. Is that correct? Is that correct?
Well, so data connection reference. No, I don't. Right now, all we have is data.
Okay, you got to remember what we did last time. If I'm remembering what we did last time, this is your project. You should be able to remember it too.
No, I remember what we did last time, and you were talking about potentially splitting this up, similar to kind of
we will
resource
need to
data and
split this
resource
up.
object.
This will not work as it is presented right now.
So we already did some things similar that split up in external storage download and external storage object. And what we're finding is that having it combined makes a lot more sense.
Okay, well, I don't agree with you. What you got to do better than just tell me that.
Sure. So having them combined means that all of your data is in one place, which is
yeah. Okay, what was the issue with external storage? You did not discuss external storage before.
Right. If we pull up external storage download and external storage object next to each other, there's nothing that external storage object external storage download is just kind of a superfluous thing that external storage object already kind of has all the information for.
Yeah, okay, that's programmer thinking. By the way, why on earth is there documentation here which has a missing argument? Can somebody answer that? Who's responsible for external storage object?
Probably nobody here.
Yeah, okay. All right, okay, fine.
But
that's a bug which somebody needs to deal with. Carla, can you make sure that's reported?
Yes, I will do it.
Okay, now let's go through this again. You think you can stuff the functionality into one function. I don't agree that that's the right thing to do.
Then you're going to end up with a different head for every kind of connection type, right? This generalization
No,
means
no,
that
no,
based on the type,
no.
you can.
No, 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 no. Sorry.
Well, what are you up to? None of us, well, okay, I guess I can't speak for everybody, but it's clearly Sean and I don't understand what you're objecting to. So
Okay, what I'm objecting
please.
to is this. Okay, let's go through what this needs to do, right? We are not going to stuff things. It reminds me of you're filling a closet, okay, or a file cabinet. And you're like, yes, there's empty space there. Let's put something there, right?
Well, so
That's
what's
not
the alternative?
the right way
Is
to
it just
design
going to
it.
be a list of like strings or something? Like, is there a data connection and then some separate list of strings?
Wait a minute, what are you talking about? Let's go through what this needs to do, okay? What are the steps in data connection?
It needs to know.
There are, I think, two things that you need to be able to do. One, you need to have some kind of data connection reference or object that represents the thing you can do operations against.
Yeah, you need to know where it is, what protocol. You need, in general, authentication. And 3, you need something that says what in that place that you need. Like SQL, it might be a query string. For a file system, it might be a path string.
This is such a hackalola, what we have here. No, this is not right.
But
Okay,
Stephen,
so look,
can I make
what the hell is this? Tables does this. If there's a table called tables, it fails. Come on, we can do better than that.
Well, Stephen, we have
Stephen,
we have an infinite number of objects in the system which have, you know, magic sub-values.
Yes, but not like this. Okay,
but
let's go through what it actually needs to do.
Stephen, can I make I also think that maybe there is room for improvement in the database stuff, but I think that if you think about it, like you start from a data connection, which is data connection to a service like Dropbox. Then once you've connected, that thing behaves like a file system. If you drill down to the level of files, then it doesn't matter that they are on S3, on Dropbox, or on.
Fine.
So what I'm
but these aren't files. Query 1 is not a file. Query 1 is a hackalola.
I agree.
Well, yeah, but this is a connection to a Postgres database,
yeah,
right?
But I agree.
That, but then this is something different.
Yeah, and I think you have a point here that the object at the database level is like the relational database. It looks only at metadata. So
yes,
it can tell you about tables, it can tell you about columns, but it cannot perform queries. You have to drill down further.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Which is why external storage object has things you can ask about the external storage object, but they are not the same thing as things
we would like to do that
bucket,
in round 2 to basically build exploration and other interfaces. But the the ultimate thing that you need in a report is something that gives you basically a link to data.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay.
I understand what you need.
That
so
whole thing
let's
can
go
be
through
built
the
out.
design. I think this is not a difficult design. Okay, I think we can do this, right? The thing is, we can't stuff all these things together in one function.
So right? There could be things that generate this. Okay, but I think ultimately,
no, we're not talking about that. We're talking about one thing. Is there is the analog, and thank you for the analogy, Sean, of external storage object. Then there is something that, you know, what we've got is we've got to be able to get the object. And there's metadata about the object, like its tables. I mean, nothing in this tells us. Okay, and then what does this do on its own? Query 1, without the import. What does that do? What does it return?
Data connection.
Right.
So
we went through
strings, and that returns a data connection. I don't think that's right. I mean, I think that no. Oh my God, that's so wrong. Okay, let's go through what this. Okay, one thing is the object with its metadata associated with it, like external storage object. how does one get, okay, so for a database, relational database, if we want one table in a relational database, how do we get that? What's the representation of that? Somebody answer that, please.
You mean right now in the system?
Yes, in the system. What is a single table in the relational database? So I've got a table, I've got the schema here, which comes from the relational database object. Now, how do I represent a single table?
When
We
you say
don't yet have that. That's what we plan to have once we get the tabular represented tables.
tabular delayed.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, all that stuff that you're going to see in that page is stuff about metadata on the table, not data.
Okay, how do I get the data?
Well, right now you can do it with entities. You can do it with external evaluate. But we want to have
forget the
with
external
tabular as well.
evaluate way of doing it.
Yeah.
We're talking
So you
about
have to register an entity store that calls that relational database, and then you can query.
Okay, fine. So it's fairly
It's roundabout.
Okay. So in this case here, what we need is a thing which snarfs the thing in. So let me just understand what is the flow. Okay. First thing is we've got this authenticated connection. Second thing is we are defining certain queries. See what's wrong here is the mixture of this essentially discovery interface with this. I mean, and again, what does this return? How is the data connection for this thing subscripted with query
we
one?
went through this. We went through this last time, Stephen. Right? It's another data connection where it's has which one is the active query. Right? You can evaluate that, and you'll see. I think, unless it's
Sean,
that much should work. That much should work. That much should work. The import will fail.
How do I get the can I say input form?
Yeah.
So there's query goes to query one, saying which query this in particular points to.
That's an absolutely
from the parent
terrible
data
design.
connection.
That's an absolutely abominable design. Sorry, but
why?
It's okay. We'll clean it up, right?
What's so horrible? What's so horrible about it, Stephen?
Because you're mixing two levels of thing. You're mixing an active operation. In other words, this is the thing that reveals metadata. Okay, this is something. One way to think about it would be to think that this is resetting some kind of default.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, something has to actually have it take action.
Exactly, which is why I want this to be as generalized as possible. So when you call import on this particular, single connection, it makes a lot of sense. The alternative, I guess, would be query goes to a single query.
No. Because as you say, there are many different things. There are queries in databases. There are kind of, bucket accesses or something in something which has data buckets. There are different kinds of operations, right?
That ultimately point to some data.
Yeah, right. And the issue is, okay, so what we've got here, it reminds me, as we talked about last time, of the resource system. Remember that discussion?
Yep.
Okay, so in the resource system, we already solved the problem of being able to say, let's look at resource objects, okay?
That's something that we named and we created the metadata for and uploaded. So of course we can query that.
Stephen, can I make a suggestion? I think that the main problem I have when I see this input form is that it's like the father data connection, the parent data connection doesn't get eaten up properly. It gets all flattened. And I think, it would be reasonable to have something which says path to a file, and then it has parent data connection, Dropbox connection. I think that would look cleaner. if you could keep the parent separate from the rest.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Look, you've got to have a thing which represents kind of.
So what does this look like? So if I have a data connection without that queries thing, what is the other thing aside from just like a list of strings containing the file paths or the queries?
No. Look. The concept that there is a data connection which can be where you can discover that there is query 1 and query 2 and so on. That's fine. I don't think it should be called data connection. I think it should be called data connection reference or something like that. Reference may not be right. Okay, but this is the thing that represents a set of things that can be done. Okay. Then the next thing, and the things that can be done can have lots of discovery done on them. Like you can say what queries are here, what this is there, and so on.
So,
right?
I mean, the thing I don't understand about this design, which nobody has mentioned thus far, is why are the queries in there, right? Because I should be able to create whatever queries I wanted in SQL. I mean, right? I mean,
So
no, I understand. I think it's reasonable to have some default queries in there. I think it's reasonable to have some, things that you supply as, and possibly even those are the only things that are accessible here.
We can have different levels of meta-ness, okay, or reference-ness. And, there are going to be families of things where we can probably build a similar type discovery query language.
Okay. Look,
okay?
Come on. We're over time here.
But the final thing that you need to have consistently packaged an analysis is, this is my data.
Yeah, I know.
Rehydrate it, and I can go from
there.
Right,
I agree. So we need a thing that we can put in that is the, okay, the best kind of thing would be something like this. Imagine the supply chain, basically, for this information. Right? One thing could be you get sort of from the generic source, this is the basic way you authenticate and do this, and it's this, and this is the URL to the database and whatever else it is. Okay, which could include, here are some queries you might want to try. Right, first level of supply chain is that generic thing. Then there's, today I looked at the, the scarves and hats section of the database. And this thing that I'm doing is the scarves and hats thing, and I want to rehydrate the scarves and hats access to this database. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Another level of supply chain, right? And I think it will be useful. And, I think the big problem here is just trying to stuff everything into one function, which is not going to work. So I think what's needed is just two functions.
Right. No, I mean, I think that's the long-term goal was to have more than one level. This is just kind of...
Okay, but so let's just figure this out. It's not difficult, right? All we need to do is separate out the... Let me think about this for a second.
Stephen, have you noticed that, database connection, relational database and database reference and external object and external download, they're all still experimental? If this was so obvious, why haven't we de-experimentalized all those other functions?
Well, we might have done that at some point. I don't think we thought to do it, but okay. I'm not okay. At a meta level, I'm not meaning to be critical. I'm just meaning to get through this without being told that we don't need to get through it. Okay, this is not bad for a 0th level design, but it isn't right. And let's not try and defend it. It's not hard, but we need to get it to something. Okay, my intuition is it will work with 2 levels.
Yeah, I also thought we need 2 levels, and that sort of less concrete level could support all kinds of discovery.
Yeah, that's right. There should be a level that is this first thing here, slightly different name, and probably a different name. I'm not certain.
Maybe data connector or something.
What if it contains multiple queries though?
That's okay. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. None of those queries will be done by this function. It is merely declaring, here are some things you can do.
Exactly. So I think that second level is already like import. There's already two levels. Data connection just says where.
Look, you can't have this. That will not work. That will not work. Okay?
What's wrong with that?
Okay, that won't work. Okay, the first level is merely, I mean, okay, this will take more unscrambling, and we're late for another meeting. So
do you see what I mean, though?
This. What?
In terms of if there's more than one thing, that is there just like a bunch of data connections that are individual that only point to one thing?
No, I mean,
I'm afraid, John, you're not making sense to me either. So you're not communicating your point very well.
Right. So one thing that you could imagine, for instance, and you guys know all this, like it's connecting to a file system, and we all are familiar with discovery exploration interfaces for file systems. It could be to a whole relational database.
Well, I mean, I have to say, I'm not wild about the way that file systems work with their state-dependent, current directory and things like this.
Right.
No, the point that Sean is making is this, that he wants something where you've got this object that represents a query one query into this data connection. He wants to be able to pick up that object and then do operations on it like import and so on. And that's a perfectly reasonable thing. And the issue is, if the original thing at the higher level in the supply chain came with 6 common queries you might want to do, how do you specialize that for one particular query? Is that a correct characterization, Sean?
No, it's more so if you want to you have one database and there's 2 different tables in it, and you want one tabular to have the data from the first table and the second tabular to have the data from the second table in the database.
No, you weren't listening to what I said.
I think that's exactly what Stephen described.
Yeah, I think so too.
But I think that last piece, though, of like combining it into one query, though, I want to get 2 distinct tabulars out of a single database. Right?
At the same time?
No.
I have one database. It has 2 different tables in it, and I want to get both of those tables into 2 separate tabulars.
Yes, that's exactly.
And so they each need a separate query to represent which table I'm getting the data from.
Yes, quite so.
And that's why this contains an association to multiple of them, and you select which one. That's right.
We understand this. We understand it. The problem is this, okay, needs to be a thing that represents a single pipe. It can't be the same function, right? There's one function that declares, oh, there are all these queries you can do. There's all this stuff you can do, feeding raw SQL, whatever else it is, right? The second thing is a blob that is simply the unhydrated version of that data. See what I'm saying? That is a single thing that when you hydrate it, it will turn into a single tabular.
But Stephen, that
I think that's
blob,
what this.
I mean, that blob is going to be eventually tabular delayed. I mean, this is like much lower level.
What is tabular delay?
Well, so I think
it's the out of core version of tabular, whatever we decide to call it. Like you're not going to write.
No, I don't think so.
Hang on.
So.
You couldn't take out 9 and take tables of it. That's the point. Like that data connection has already collapsed into a single query, so you can't take tables of out 9.
I know, which is why it shouldn't be the same function. Okay, that function has to be a function where all the discovery interface works on it.
But then they all get an individual name rather than getting grouped by types and things. Then we're going to have a whole bunch of different heads.
I don't understand how you get from the former to the latter. But let me ask a slightly different question. So, are you imagining something where you might?
By the way, Sean, just for you to understand this, external object can represent many different kinds of things. It represents many types, and so similarly, we'll have some kind of external data object or something. I don't know what it'll be called. that represents that thing, and there will be many versions of that thing.
Can I make a
So
suggestion?
let me finish my question to Sean.
Yeah.
Are you imagining something where you could do import of I'm not going to attempt to pronounce that P variable there, and then list of query 1 comma query 2, and it'll give you 2 tabulars? Right, I'm trying
Let's
to
have this
understand.
in a separate meeting. We've got
Yeah.
another thing we got to go to. Let's have this in a separate meeting. Let's start
Okay.
next time by talking about this. Let's make sure we have a nice clean summary. If you guys kind of pre-talked about it, because I think several people here understand what I think we're going to be able to solve this pretty nicely with 2 functions. One that I'm just going to say what I think is going to happen. We're going to have 2 functions. One is something very similar to this, that is a discovery, that is a handle to the external data thing that is capable of having discovery done on it. The second thing we're going to have is some kind of external data object thing derived from this, which is a straight shot where you can say to it, just import it or whatever else. Maybe it doesn't even need an import. Maybe it's an open bracket, close bracket. I don't know. But a thing.
So we're just
which is
renaming out 9. Yeah.
well, it's more. Yes, more or less.
Yeah. Okay.
Potentially.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Okay. So, well, it probably wouldn't be accessed quite the same way, but that type
Right.
of thing.
I think by renaming means we'll have a head that has
Yeah,
P
like data
in the
connection
first.
object or something.
Yes. Right. So have a think through. I think that's going to work. Okay.
Okay.
My intuition, at least.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Onward. Okay. See you all
Bye.
soon.
See you then. Bye.
Okay.
Bye.